Welcome to Author Intelligence, where writing meets innovation. Hosted by authors Elizabeth Ann West and Stacy Anderson of the Future Fiction Academy, we explore writing and publishing with AI assistance.
Hey, Stacy.
Hey, Elizabeth, how are you?
I am good. So I did notice on our podcast, we kind of suck at the whole intro thing. So I'm Elizabeth Ann West. I have been an author since 2011. People know me as EAW in the indie space. I've written over 25 books. I've been on the bestseller lists on the various stores and all of that. And more importantly, I left my crappy ex-husband with book royalties. That's my claim to fame. So that's me. And then I fell in love with AI in 2021, and haven't stopped. So
I'm Stacy Anderson. I have written under several different pen names because I am not even the only Stacy Anderson in my town. So, and needed more distinctive names. I've been writing since 2015, off and on. Like many authors in the community, I've kind of faded out because of family issues, come back in. I've been using AI for a year and a half, 2 years, quite a while playing around with it. So that's my story. I think between the two of us, we have followed a path that many other authors in the community have taken.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, we both have special needs kids. We both have autoimmune disorders. We both do the whole work from home, also take care of people, even if people out there don't have kids, a lot of people take care of aging parents or other people or cats and dogs or whatever it is. But we do have a lot of demographics in common, I think, with a lot of authors out there. So today, you want to talk about the title for today's podcast because you came up with this, I think, and it always makes me laugh.
But so why does the AI have the memory of Paw Paw?
Yeah. I think this is something that a lot of authors want the AI to do from the get-go. Like once you maybe prompt a few times in chat, your first question as an author is, okay, how do I get it to know my character names? And do you want to talk about how not easy that is?
Yes. So again, it has gotten easier, but all AIs have this context window. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it can only remember so many tokens, which translate to so many words. That can be as low as 3,000 words. Yeah. And then it doesn't remember anymore. Like it is out of its context window, as in there's out of the working parameters. So if you've had a really long chat going with one of these AIs with a shorter context window, especially, it forgot what you told it at the beginning of the chat. So you have to constantly reiterate, we are writing this type of novel. Here are the characters. You have to repeat yourself often in these prompts. So these 100,000, 200,000 token context windows, it has become easier because it takes quite a while to get to that end of the context window. But many of us, our prompts have grown. With that.
And also, just because something says it has 128,000 token context, which is the kind of baseline now for like a bigger model in terms of, I think all the GPT-4o and 4o minis and GPT-4 Turbo, they kind of
all the foundational models all have.
They went to 128. It's shenanigans on the back end in terms of how these models are allowing prompts that are 128,000 tokens to go. So
it's not reading the prompts like you and I would read it.
No, it does this, I think, insidious thing, kind of like RAG on the back end, which is retrieval augmented generation. And my joke for this is that you can tell that the industry is very male oriented, that they thought RAG was a really good acronym for this. But anyway, retrieval augmented generation. What it does is it takes a large section of text and it tries its best to summarize it in a meaningful way at set intervals. And I'll give I'll give a quick example about this. Okay. So imagine you have a 100,000 word novel and you stick it in there. What it tries to do is every paragraph or couple of paragraphs, it tries to summarize what the kernel meaning of that little paragraph is. Now in fiction, that's a problem because our paragraphs are not, first of all, this entire system is designed for nonfiction. It's really designed for I can take a whole bunch of information, like a library of like maybe say law cases, and I could tell you the law cases that were pertinent to what you're asking for. Doesn't do so well with fiction. I mean, how do you index? And I mean, indexing and summarizing fiction is kind of an art, because there's a lot of metaphor. So you get things where it will just skip information that is critical for us, like names of dogs, names of characters, understanding that a character whose name's Charlotte and also referred to as Charlie is the same person. Sometimes it messes that up. And so that's why I think when people put their entire manuscript into, say, Claude Chat or OpenAI Chat, all of a sudden when they go, okay, write the next chapter or whatever, it's almost like gobbledygook, or there's too many things that are wrong that they feel like they have to make a lot of changes.
In terms of plain language, that is like if the AI is skimming or looking for keywords,
Yeah.
which you can utilize in your prompt. If you are very specific on almost the keywords you want it to look for, it will direct that rag a little bit better, but it is almost a cheat. It's not 100,000 tokens as you and I would think of it.
Right. One of my first instances that I was playing with RAG when it came out last year is I gave it actually a story Bible. So I even gave it nonfiction. But even that, I then asked questions of it and I was like, oh, who helped this character polish the silverware? And it was like, nobody polished the silverware. I'm like, people definitely polish the silverware. Who helped polish the silverware? Nope, nobody polished the silverware. So then I look at the actual story Bible. It's because the story Bible said they polished the silver. And the AI wasn't smart enough back then to go, oh, silverware, it's the same thing. We have to remember that these things are just predicting the next word. And so the ability to reason, there would have been tableware in the polishing the silver adventure. If I'd asked it who polished the candlesticks, it would have been like, nobody polished candlesticks either, because I said silver. And when I did that in the story Bible, it did not expand that concept to mean the candlesticks, the candelabras, all of the
It's made
the
of
silver plates.
silver.
Not everything made of silver. I didn't understand that. I should have had to say they polished everything made of silver in the household. Then I would have understood. Okay. So how do we solve this when we're writing? Because I honestly, I am one of the few people I think that still kind of eschews we call it giving it the story so far methodology. Like now I'm doing it more and more. I'm doing that prompting because some of the models are able to handle it more. But you've worked with me for long enough to know that my first prompting strategy is not to give it the whole story.
No, that is good for a writing style, I think. It can emulate that writing style, but for grabbing base information, you came up with this first, or through the documentation. I
Yeah.
think you realized how to apply this for fiction, but it is a two-step process now. So
Yep.
you don't just say, write the next scene. No matter how much information you give it, how little, it's not write the next scene. It is make a plan to write the next scene, write the next scene. And however you call those plans, we usually call them either writing briefs, chapter briefs, scene
chapter
briefs, something.
briefs. Yeah.
But it's essentially a plan and then execute the plan, which is writing the scene.
And then before we came up with that step, before that, I had what I call components. Now, components is something that has existed for a really long time, even back when we were doing system prompting. Back before I even worked for Pseudo-Write, I was using components inside my system prompt. The feature that Pseudo-Write now calls Story Bible. It originally was called something else. And it was, the first goes of it was like, here's your components. Now make the beats for the scene and now write the scenes. We did the beats back in January. This is before I took the job at Pseudo-Write, back in January with ChatGPT 3.5, like the OG, not the 16K. I'm talking about when it had 8,000 tokens that we could work with. And we were like, this is great. We have 5,000 words to play with. So I was giving it, 1,000 to 2,000 words of like, here's my characters, here's my outline, here's my stuff. And then being like, okay, make a play, like, go ahead and do the beats. Now write the thing. And that thing could only write 400 to 500 words at a time. But we made it work. Now we're able to get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words back. The most I've gotten it to give back in one response is with 4.0 Mini, and that was a 7,000 word response of multiple scenes. it wrote each scene as like 800 words, but it did multiple scenes in one response. So that's where we are today. So anyway, the key thing is that components. So the first step I would say is components, 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 components. And what the heck is a component?
The component are any of the objects that go into a story. So they could be characters, they could be your outline, it could be your setting, any world building information, magic system, planets, whatever your book is. It is those things for plotters that you would plan out beforehand. People that love doing world building. That's all the components. And that includes some things you might necessarily not think of, like writing style that the AI does need.
Yes. And if you're a pantser, you should still put these in your system prompt, and you can just put the information that you know of. So for example, if you are a pantser and you're like, I don't make a whole, I don't know who this author is, by the way. I don't know anybody who writes magic and is not a plotter, but okay. But if you are somebody out there who is like, there's going to be magic in my book and I have no idea what the magic system is going to be, you can literally just say magic system, put it in our square brackets that we talk about, square brackets, Tupperware container, put a lid on it. So you stick it in there, magic system, and it can be whatever your thoughts are. The magic system should be based on the natural world. The magic system should be based on the elements. The magic system should be based on the character's individual faith to a goddess or deity. Whatever you do know about the world, you can stick in the components. And then as you're writing, you can go back and add information to those components as you are seeing more of the story.
Exactly. So character setting, add them as you know it.
Yep.
Give it as much as you know.
Yes. But components, I would say, are important whether you are a pantser or a plotter. And I know a lot of pantsers are like, oh, I don't need to do that. That's plotter people stuff. No, it's a requirement of the AI. Even if you have an empty box, you're at least sending the signal to the AI that that is a box or that is an element that should be in the story, like magic system. I may have an empty magic system. You can even stick in here. I don't know. Just decide what you want for the magic system. Here you go. But it has to have instructions. The AI can't just, the AI really doesn't create. It's really not creative. You have to give it the information that you want for it to produce anything that's worth reading. Okay. Because we talk about this all the time. Need to know basis. You're on a need to know basis.
That's where the writing briefs come into play.
Yeah. So sometimes there was a member of the Future Fiction Academy that posted over the weekend. She was using our automatic book methodology and stuff like that, and she did it. We're testing. We're in testing stages as a group of like how far can we make the AI automate. And what was it? She Cozy Mystery killed her killer. She had these components of, okay, so you have this character who's the killer, and then the AI killed the killer as a third victim story. So mystery is sometimes the funniest thing, but I've also seen it in romance too, where it's like she fell in love and she knew she was going to marry him, and so then at the meet cute, it's like, and she fell in love and she knew she was going to marry him. Like it's like no.
Yep. If AI has information, it often wants to use it. So it'll try to skip to the killer or revealing the killer in chapter 3, having them fall in love in the meet cute, or having him think about his Aunt Ingrid while he's in the middle of while the police detective is in the middle of a high-speed chase. Because if it has that information, it wants to add that information. It wants to use it.
So we use the scene briefs, or that intermediary, the interstitial step is what I always tell people, but the intermediary step, the interstitial step, it's almost like a colander or a filter. So if your components has all of this information up at the top, like everything that's in the book, then you're putting it through like this colander or whatever to sift out only the information that the AI needs to know to write that scene or write that chapter. And even then, sometimes the AI gets it wrong. We do have the AI write these things, but then we usually review them and be like, oh no, Sheila's dead. Like it'll say, then Sheila comes in and nope, Sheila's dead. Sheila died in the last, And
yeah, exactly. So your components might be all of the characters. The scene brief will have only the characters that are in that scene. So Aunt Ingrid that showed up in chapter 1 won't show up in chapter 4's police chase.
Right.
So she is not included in that writing.
Unless in the middle of the police chase, Aunt Ingrid calls him to talk to him about dinner, and you're writing like some comedy thing, and he's like hiding the fact that he's an assassin. Now that that's a story I want to write. So
Yes. But in that case, it's purposeful on your part as the human.
and even that kind of a gag, you would have to spell that out for the AI. The AI is probably not going to come up with a gag like that on their own because they're it's very linear. Like I say, it's not really creative. It's predicting the next word. So if you want something really creative and imaginative as far as the interaction between characters goes, you're going to have to inject that either into your outline or into your scene brief. So I think we wanted to show for those of you who do watch the YouTubes, and we'll describe as we're going. But we wanted to talk about new software that we have launched that's free for everybody called Raptor Write. It's Rexy's baby brother. I'm getting such flack from people about how I'm obsessed with dinosaurs. But I'm not obsessed with dinosaurs. That's the funny. I don't have dinosaur PJs. I don't have dinosaur socks. It just
Although we will have to get some now.
the FFA Secret Santa. We'll just all exchange
Dinosaur themed items.
dinosaur themed stuff. The dinosaur thing just came from the don't be a T-Rex and don't forget that your hands reach the keyboard. And then it just kind of morphed. And I think that all of us of a certain generation, we were all really impacted by Jurassic Park, not just from a standpoint of really cool movie, but I mean, I can remember being fascinated just by the very idea of plausible science fiction.
Yeah, there's the science built into it. Premise.
Yeah, it was one of the first science fiction movies I saw, and later book that I read, that it didn't feel like it was the distant future. And I think that's something that our generations are like of adults from boomers down to Gen Zers, although Gen Zs aren't adults yet, but whatever, they're getting there. The point is that all of us now who are alive, we're really having to realize that technology is just moving at a breakneck speed, and things that are dreamt about suddenly can be a reality within a couple of years. So that's why the dinosaurs. I think the dinosaurs are for everyone. Nobody is offended by a dinosaur. You can have a cute Rexy, you can have a fearsome Rexy, whatever your Rexy needs to be. And now he has a baby brother, Raptor. So I will go ahead and share my screen and talk a little bit about Raptor Write. So here I am on Raptor Write. And, you know, we designed this looking very different than Rexy. This thing is designed, you have your tabs on the left-hand side where you have basic, where you can control all of your models. We do require you to put your key in from Open Router, really simple. I think Open Router is one of the best advances for authors or for people using AI. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because not only we talk about it often for all of these low cost and not safe for work models, which there is a ton, but it also has Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, as all the foundational models. So if you don't want to set up accounts at all of these different foundational models with OpenAI, with Anthropic, you don't have to. You can go to, and for a very reasonable small fee, when you add more money to it and it's all prepaid, you can have one key to rule them all and have access to just about every LLM you could hope to want.
Yeah, I honestly don't even really know what the fee is on Open Router. I think it is, they call them credits. So I put my credits in. So I have $24, for example. You can even use crypto to pay for it. I don't know why you would, but sure. The pricing is 5% plus 35 cents for Stripe. So the pricing per model and fees. So that's with the pricing of the models. But you put the money in and like they talk a small amount for their side of it. So like if I put $10 in, I think I get like $9 worth of
Even more than that, it was
it was
$9.30 or something.
yeah. Something significant here. Okay, so oh well, actually, I can answer that. So 9 months ago, I know I put $10 in. I got $9.15 of stuff. When I put $30 in, I got $28.20 worth of credits. I last put money in 9 months ago, people. I still have $24.91 of my money left.
91 cents and 7/10 of a cent.
Oh yeah, and that does matter because these things are so small. So the other thing I can do on my account is I can go to this thing called Activity. And it will show me how I've been using my models on Open Router. So I had to run some stuff for FFA to kind of decide which ones were the spicy models that we wanted to use. And one of the ones that I was using here, Toppy, oh my gosh. And you guys know this from our Not Safe for Work episodes. Toppy wrote 604 tokens. I gave it 226, but the total cost of that is 4 zeros and then 575. So 0.0000575. I don't even know how to say how many pennies that is. Like
And that's 5,000
5
of a
thousand
cents of 1
5,000
cent.
of a penny, 5,000ths of a penny. See, and you wondered what you were going to use middle school math for. Now, the other thing that I was doing last night, and this really contrasts the difference here, is we were running some chapters, and here is an example where I gave it Claude Sonnet. Got 43,900, basically 44,000 tokens. It wrote 966, and that cost me 14 cents. That is a huge disparity between these models. So it does behoove you to click the browse button. And this goes back to, why does Paw Paw have such a crappy memory? You're on the browse section of OpenRouter. On this left-hand side here, it says context length. Context length is that magic phrase of like, how many tokens can the AI process in one response, like one prompt plus the response back, right? And you'll see that it starts off at 4K, and all the models can handle that. But if I jump up to 64K, for example, I only have 64 models to choose from. And the majority of them are going to be moderated models like Perplexity, Sonar 405 Online. This one is a newer one. These bigger models are also going to cost more. It has 127,000 context. It's $5 for 1 million input tokens and $5 for 1 million output tokens. So if you're trying to think of like, well, how would that 44,000 calculate? So about 25 cents. But there are some models that are open source that don't judge you, that will do the not safe for work. One of them, Mistral Large. Mistral Large is 128,000 tokens of context, and it's only $3 for 1 million input tokens and $9 for 1 million output tokens. For those who have to write not safe for work in large context and have, multiple things, I would say this is one of the best models for it. And Steph was even using it. Steph Pajonas, one of our business partners, she was using Mistral Large this morning because Claude was having Claude and ChatGPT were having issues this morning that we're recording this. And she just hopped over to Mistral. And because the writing was already in there from their styles, Mistral was able to just continue it. So,
yeah. And a lot of these companies are still companies reliant on physical servers. So they're not up 100% of the time. You have to, and unfortunately, that might be during your writing time, during your high productivity time. So this gives you options to jump to different models that are using different servers. You have more options when you know about these other models.
1,000%. And I would say too, it's best if you don't just have one model that you love more than any other model, have a couple of models that you're familiar with prompting and familiar with the kinds of outputs that you're going to get. So back to Raptor Write, and this is kind of cool about how context matters. So I'm going to click over here on my project, which is at the top there. You'll see that we have a bunch of project files down here, and there's like a little toggle. Raptor Write is designed that you can put any document in here that you want and copy and paste it. And when you toggle it on, it includes that document in the prompt, or it takes it out. It's basically mega prompting at that component level. So if I was to click on this writing style document, you'll notice that it says writing styles in square brackets. So I have a square bracket writing style. The writing style for this contemporary women's fiction serial should be confident and emotionally charged, reflecting Jennifer Holland's belief that she has everything under control. And it goes on, it talks about first person present tense, allowing the readers to connect deeply with Jennifer's experiences and emotions. The tone is modern. I go through everything. And at the bottom of it, I do a slash. I do my square brackets and I do a slash and then writing style. And so my writing style is encapsulated. So anytime I slide this on and it injects it into the prompt, the AI is going to know exactly what these paragraphs relate to. There's no mystery or ambiguity because it's labeled as the writing style.
Yes. Have you ever had a friend that just calls you up and says, "Can you believe what he did?"
Yeah.
You're like, "What are you talking about? Catch me up." That's sometimes, depending on your prompting style, depending on how whatever software is interjecting this information into your prompt, the LLM is getting the same thing. Like, Jenny likes this. Like, what are you talking about? Put that in context.
Yeah.
It's what these Tupperwares and these square brackets do. It puts it, okay, I'm calling you about this writing style. Here's the information. And now, okay, I can use this now. So,
By the way, you just described conversations with my mother and who I live with. So every once in a while, like, you'll be having breakfast and stuff, and she'll just out of the blue be like, I think Steve's making a good decision. And I'm like, Mom, what about Ansu? And then I get whatever it was that she was thinking about beforehand that week. Yeah.
yes. But unfortunately, like with the LLMs, you can't clarify that. It just has to make it up. Like, well,
Yeah.
I guess here's what I think it's doing.
Here's what I think this is. And even though people would look at this and go, well, Elizabeth, the first thing says the writing style for this contemporary women's fiction novel. But remember, all of this stuff just gets turned into numbers as far as the AI is concerned. This is not going to be arranged in paragraphs, really, not very well. I mean, there is a token for paragraph returns to tell them like how it goes, but it's not necessarily going to know that the language is captivating in the narrative that necessarily relates to writing style. So it's always best to put it in a square bracket box so that it knows that all these tokens here relate to the one thing. The other thing I like about Raptor Write, because we have these toggles, you can actually have documents that are just for you. So we actually have a document right here that's the outline for the rest of the book, and it's just kind of our ideas, which the AI helped us with. We haven't finalized it yet. So when I'm writing, I don't actually push the slider to include that. I leave it off. So if I'm working on a scene, I can go ahead and turn on writing style. And then I'm going to also turn on this story so far. So I'm going to put on story so far. And the core way that Raptor Write is designed for is I have toggled on writing style and story so far. And if I go to click a new document, and I'll bring this document up right here, although it doesn't really matter because these aren't turned on, they're not going to be in the prompt. Scene 21 and scene 22, I do not have in the prompt. But this new document that I did, I'll call it scene 21 example. So we have Claude 3.5 sonnets, my model. My output limit, you select this. This is how many tokens it's going to output. Right now it's at 512. Let me go ahead and bump that up to 2048. So it'll do at least 1,000. I just have to press backslash. The prompt is already built in here to just continue. That's what it's designed fundamentally to do. So it's generating right now. And then I will also click and show you guys a little bit of it. So I'll tell you what it says here. And this was what happens with Claude sometimes, I've noticed. Claude read all that information and said, thank you for providing the detailed story so far. I read through it and understand the context and characters. Jennifer Holland is moving with her teenage daughter, Charlie, to her father's mansion in upstate New York after losing her job and having to leave her mother's house. There's tension with Jennifer's father, David, and grandmother, Evelyn, as they settle into this new living situation. I'll keep this context in mind as I continue the story. What would you like to happen next? So this happens with Claude sometimes. So since I don't like that generation, I'm going to thumbs it down. And I'm just going to put in here, continue the story, the contentious breakfast. So I just put that information in. I'll press return, and now I'll press the backslash again. And now it'll have that information at the bottom of the prompt, and it'll know what to write next for the scene. So it's generating right now. Here's a continuation of the story with a contentious breakfast scene. Scene 21, start. The next morning, I wake to sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains and the distant sound of birds chirping. Okay, take a drink. That's definitely AI-isms. For a moment, I forget where I am. My mind's still foggy with sleep. Then reality crashes in. I'm in my father's house, a place that feels more like a museum than a home. I drag myself out of bed, fumbling for my phone to check the time, 8:30 a.m. Later than I usually sleep. But after the emotional roller coaster of yesterday, I'm not surprised. I throw on some clothes and make my way downstairs, following the scent of coffee. And now there's pancakes and there's dialogue and all of that. All in all, it wrote 813 words. If I like it, I can press equals, and now it's there. And I can use Raptor Write to actually expand these things. Really cool. But I want to talk about the context. So we have a button up here. It looks like a little quotation mark, and it says show last prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. All right. This is the last prompt that I ran, and it actually shows, 34,000 words were sent, 45,000 tokens. Now, the tokenizer that we're using is the GPT, the OpenAI tokenizer. Your tokens may vary if you use a different token counter, but it's within a couple hundred. Like it's not going to be that off. So
Pretty
this is
close.
what got sent. So the sent, if we go and start looking at these individual components, I'm going to go all the way to the top. You'll see this prompt has continue the story below without repeating the story unless it's for literary effect. Include only the text you are adding. You should read what is before the tag and match the same style and tone so the next text fits with the narrative properly. Story, writing style, start. And then it has writing style, bracketed, and then it has a story writing style end. Because we know that tagging things is a new thing for authors, Raptor Write will always tag the document by the document name. So you want to make your document names kind of make sense in the sense that I called it writing style or something like that. So it knows for the start and for the end, if you're going to put it in the prompt. Here we have story so far, start, and you'll see scene 1, and it says scene 1 final because it has the name of the scene 1 there. Scene 1 final, and then it actually has the closed container down here. Here's scene 2 final. I just went too fast. Let's see if we can find scene 1 final. Right here, scene 1 final. So we're even putting our scenes inside of Tupperware containers. If we had them as individual documents in here, it would naturally do it automatically for you when you just copy and paste it in. Stacy and I were working and we were like, let's just put the whole thing. We just did it as one document because we were working on this weeks ago. So the first 20 scenes are in here. And so it has the context of what's in here. And then the story so far, continue the story with a contentious breakfast. So it has information in there and it has components. Now, one thing we were doing last night, which was, I think, a little bit better, is I actually had the character list in there too. And I think it was stronger because the first time we were running last night, it kept making Evelyn the housekeeper instead of the great grandmother. So these are things that can happen if you don't have a character list in there to explain who's who. So, but I mean, this is what we're talking about, making it easy. You can put your book in there, say continue, tell you want a contentious breakfast scene, and it gives you 813 words to start playing with. And it matched the style pretty well. I nearly choke on my coffee. Excuse me? Charlie's education is just fine, thank you. And she doesn't need to carry on anything. It's got that snarky, it's got the combative stuff between these characters. So I think that that's the basics of why it doesn't have good memory, why Paw Paw has bad memory. If you just feed the documents with no information, it doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't have a context. You can kind of transform it into nonfiction, which we call components. So your character list, your outlines, that kind of a thing. The other thing too, I would say is that right now, there's no way to weight what you put in the prompt. And what I mean by that is you can't say character list is more important than, say, this information about chapter 2. I think that functionality is coming down the road, down the pipeline. We're seeing it coming into the fine tuning capabilities. You can actually weight responses and weight information. So the best way to make sure an AI actually remembers something that's an important detail, repeat it. So if you, for example, if you want very clear that there's like a contentious relationship between father and daughter, you'd put it in the characters. You would stick it in like the summary, the hook and pitch of the book. You would stick it in the outline. You would mention it a couple of times. The more you mention something, the only way to really weight tokens is to have them repeat in the prompt. So if it's constantly repeating every time Jennifer and David are tokens together that they have a contentious relationship, the AI is going to go, oh, I get it now. In the vector star field, we need to be disagreeing, not, oh, I love my daddy. You know, we don't want that kind of relationship. We want this kind of relationship. So just repeat what's important to you in your components.
Yep, exactly. And you can do that in multiple different ways. Like you said, that could be in the character sheets, mentioning with both of them. That could be in the writing style, highlight the contentious relationship, because that is a major relationship in this book. You can put it in the scene briefs, or you can put it in your outlines where they have a contentious argument. And the more, like you said, the more you highlight it, the more it's likely to show through in the style that you want.
The other thing I would suggest too, for if you really want to make the AI seem really smart when it's really dumb, is consider making your character list by act. What I mean by that is your main character is probably one character description for act 1, and then some stuff happens to her. How's she going to be a different version in act 2? And if you are using that character list only for scenes in that specific act, the AI is going to be a lot better at going, oh, Now her relationship with David is thawing, and she's not jumping to thinking he's always out to get her, just trying to meddle or something like that. Now you can start getting those subtle emotional beats into the writing because you've changed your components across the story, because the AI is not smart enough to do that. It really isn't.
Yeah. I have different character descriptions by act. I also include character arcs as part of the character description.
In the outline, you can say, this is a turning point for this character and why, and things like that, like how it's going to change the character. Those kinds of signposts and things like that can give the AI more information because it's just not smart. It has the memory of Paw Paw. It's going to regurgitate some keywords back to you. Sometimes it gets it wrong. And it's just because that's the way the context works.
Well, I think that was an excellent discussion, Elizabeth, that really, even for me, helped clarify, remind me of a lot of the aspects of the AI that I often take for granted. Like we see, even when we talk about it, we personify it. We call Claude he. It's not intelligent. It's not smart. It is a dictionary slot machine. And we have to remember that, especially with the information we give it and how we give it to it. Same thing with programming, garbage in, garbage out. The better the input that you give it, the better the scene that you're going to receive from it.
And more is not always better. More, like, let me give you the whole manuscript. The AI may not need the whole manuscript. It may actually perform better for you with an outline of what's happened so far. The last chapter, I think this is your prompting strategy, your early prompting.
Yes, I've done this before with a lot of luck.
And Steph does this too when she pantses. She just gives like the last couple of chapters and says, keep going. Here's what I want to have happen. It doesn't necessarily need to know everything if everything doesn't have to be in that scene.
Yeah. If anything, that just becomes noise for it. And then it starts ragging even more, pulling out just keywords and summarization, and you get less of a sharp edge of exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like your message, it dilutes it. The signal, it's noise to the signal. It dilutes because the AI really wants to be a good boy or a good girl. It just wants to do really well. It wants to make you happy. It wants to give a response that you're happy with. But if you give it a whole bunch of information it's like those damn word problems in school when they give you the extra information and you have to cross it out. Those word problems were hard. Like, you remember? It would give you extra information and you have to no, I don't need to know how many ribbons Minnie had if we're trying to figure out buckles on her shoe or whatever the word problem was.
Or if you've ever trained a pet.
Yep.
If you want him to sit, you give him one clear command, sit. Whereas if you try to have a conversation with the dog, now Fido, I think we talked about this before.
Making choices.
My mom does that. And the poor animal, it's too many words.
Yeah.
Whereas if I walk up and say, sit, it knows what it wants. Right. So clearer, concise, to the point can often be better than volumes of words.
And we also recommend it for marriages and relationships out there too. All right. Well, until next time, everyone, please keep experimenting, have fun prompting, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Author Intelligence, brought to you by the Future Fiction Academy. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or better yet, share it with another writing friend. Stay creative and see you in the next episode.